Just a bit of scene setting and context setting, if I may, just about Friends of the Elderly, because I think an organisation like mine may well be one of your customers. We're a charity. We turn over about 30 million a year. We have 14 care homes nationally. Each care home is home to about between 30 and 100 residents. We run 8 domiciliary care or home care services around the country, and we run a series of day centres, those rapidly disappearing things that the local authority used to provide, that private sector now provides. And we do a lot of fundraising. So our fundraising and our surplus after trading goes to our free-to-access services. So that's phoning older people, a bit like Silverline, visiting older people, and we're one of the UK's largest providers of grants for things like fridges and telephones and microwaves and TVs when these things fail, and that's the only window to the outside world that an older person has. We were Downing Street Social Action Partner 2014-15. That's not a political statement ahead of Brexit. You make your own minds up. That's simply the fact that Downing Street liked us with staff, and the legacy of that is that we get their comms team advising our board, and it's all a good legacy for us. We're central London headquarters, but we're coming out, we're devolving to our regions, and we've realised that as a 105-year-old charity that started off as Friends for Gentlefolk and Worthy Poor, I'll let you work out worthy and unworthy, we've now become Friends of the Elderly. The Queen is our patron, and we're changing our value set from an old organisation that was reasonably sort of stuffy to something which has to survive in the third sector right now. So, you know, things like independence and dignity and respect, well-being, safety, positive risk-taking for older people. You'll be learning as you go on and more in this sort of sector, more about the concept of person-centred care and a good life. But that really is the sort of things that we should be talking about. We're regulated, and I think most of your clients, if you're providing services to regulated services, will be regulated by the Care Quality Commission, and everything now is focusing on their key lines of inquiry, how they inspect our services. So is it safe? Is it effective? Is it caring? Is it responsive? And is it well led? That's the way forward for the mindset of your clients. So just to give you a quick summary of domiciliary care or home care, a few years ago we would not have been able to provide in people's own homes dementia care, care for really frail people, really age-related disability, mental health, comorbidity, really, a number of life-limiting conditions and end-of-life care. Now, with sort of training and supervision and a little bit of technology, we can start to do those things. And it's a very good job that we can, because what we're finding is that critical and substantial care, as they call it, which used to be funded by local authorities, is no longer being funded. And so, is the only thing being funded. And as a result of that, the local authority is not funding things like companionship, shopping, home from hospital adjustments. And that's a really difficult, when you set your mind to that. An example I give, and it's a very basic example, is if we go into somebody's home and they have a series of complex needs and they have a dog. All they've been thinking about during the day is their dog, and the dog is barking and the dog has to be taken for a walk. There's no social care budget to take the dog for a walk. So as long as the dog's not taken for a walk, the person we're trying to care for and work with is completely agitated, completely upset, and nothing works. So we've got to start thinking about, the people at the centre of this thing. Find a way of taking the dog for a walk. I don't care if it's a robot, just get a bloody dog walked. And then we can start to look after the person. Just as a heads up, the sort of things you might have to be responding to, we're seeing more and more family carers. The Care Act and the Carers Allowance, there are, I think, 6 million people caring for older relatives in this country at the moment. And the press talks a lot about bed blockers and delayed discharge. To me, bed blockers, it's just people who have needs, and we can't meet those needs in time. So, as I said, it's a dual market developing, one which is social care funded, and one increasingly privately funded. And it's not cheap. If you take a benchmark of about £20 an hour to provide social care around the country now, privately, And you add that up for, say, an hour in the morning for a shower, a breakfast and medication, lunchtime, a meal, sort out the catheter, apply creams, apply meds, an evening, put to bed, probably too early because you haven't got enough staff, wash, meds, toileting, creams, continence. That comes out at about £20,000 a year of private funding. So we're starting to get back to the beginning of life, which is, if you can afford it, your kids through private school, if you're lucky enough, right through to, if you can afford it, your older relatives through a private care system as well. And when we're providing this care, we're seeing it provided in living rooms, which have become bedrooms. And we really need to do something about that. Integration of health and social care is happening. So the care workers in the community are very generic, upskilled workers now, but they're still paid very poorly. It's definitely no longer a home help situation. I put it akin to district nurses 10 years ago, being the only community contact out there now. But it's still a pedestrian service with low technological input. There are organisations you can turn to get more information about home care. One is the United Kingdom Home Care Association. They represent about 3,000 domiciliary care providers. They'd be delighted to help you. And there's also Skills for Care, the Sector Skills Council, and Skills for Health, who are very knowledgeable as well. Some of the things that I would be looking for help from is how we deal with demanding family clients, those who want to stay in touch. I call it the displaced guilt. They're not there to look after mum and dad because they work in the city, but they want to be in contact. We need to be able to communicate with them to tell them how mum and dad's getting on. We need help with training, learning and development and supervision so that we can deliver and record in accordance with regulation. And we're dealing with heavy logistics. We're dialing in and dialing out at the end of calls. We're paid by the minute, in some cases by local authorities. We have to get data and information to carers about traffic jams, inclement weather, change in schedules, emergency. And if one ambulance turns up, that's about 20 phone calls to other people who have to be moved on for their day. And we're doing a lot of work with call pendants for emergency cords and watches and things, and GPS tracking. I've got one story where we looked after somebody in Brighton. They had Parkinson's. They should be allowed to go. People should be allowed to go and walk on the South Downs. It's their human right. But he froze every now and again. He would freeze, and £250,000 later, we found him in terms of police helicopters, police time, Coast Guards, lifeguard, the whole thing. And that would have been sorted out if we had a reasonable tracking device and we had permission and protocols around that. Let me turn briefly to our care homes. 14 care homes. They're rather posh care homes. Peter, our property director, is here with us, so he's been at the charity longer than I have. I've been here for 2 years. But, for instance, we have Perrin's house, gifted from the Lee and Perrin family in Worcester, from Worcester Sauce fame. And we've just sold, because it was too small and not efficient, the Sir Thomas Lipton house, the Tea Baron. I'll tell a quick story about Sir Thomas Lipton. He was one of the first real entrepreneurs in retail. And when you went into his stores in Edinburgh, you went past a mirror which showed you all small and gaunt and pasty as you went into his store. And as you came out of his store, he had another mirror which showed you sort of rounded, rotund, taller, and better off from the experience in the Lipton store. But our care homes. 30, 40 years ago, someone would come into our care home at 65, drop their bag, and go on a world cruise. Now they come into our care homes at 80 plus. High dependency, towards the end of their life, probably 2 years is the average tenancy in one of our care homes. We have residential, dementia and nursing registrations, and we try and get our balance right. But there's legislation, things like the Mental Capacity Act, and things called a deprivation of liberties order. Now, what has that got to do with my world, you might ask? Well, if somebody who lives in one of our residential care homes has a deprivation of liberty order listed against them, we try and allow them to live in our home. But that means that they also have to, they're going to want to walk and go into the garden. So are we going to have to pay to secure all the gardens in our lovely hundreds of acres, or tens of acres sometimes, or sometimes just the odd 1 acre? And do we then alarm our doors so that everybody else who should have the freedom and flexibility to walk out of what is their right, their home under human rights, should the alarms be going off? So we have this whole debate about how do we get GPS tracking? Do we get consent for that? Is it on the walking stick? Is it in the shoe? Is it in the watch? And if it's 20 yards into the back garden, that's fine. If it's 20 yards in the front, it's into the main road. So we could certainly do with some help on something like that. Local authorities now have healthcare powers as well, so they will be commissioners as well as clinical commissioning groups as part of continuing healthcare. And Peter will stand testament to the fact that our traditional stock of facilities and homes is now having to be made dementia-friendly, with sensory gardens, light therapy rooms, coloured corridors, memory boxes, and access control. And a memory box is a very simple, low-tech solution. It's a box that gives you, as you walk past it, a clue to that person, who that person is, so we don't lose their identity. So that Fred, who's lost his memory, who was a pilot, when he walks past his room, and he won't recognise his room, but when he walks past his room and sees that model of Concorde and sees that picture as him as the Concorde pilot, he knows that's his home, and he goes into his room with his dignity intact, and he remembers who he is. So dementia readiness is something we want to carry through our entire offer, through recruitment, training, the experience that we give our people, and we're contemplating building new dementia wings of households of 12 in up to a sort of 15 to 30 million building program, looking at care villages, lifetime homes, extra care, retirement communities. You've heard these terms time and time again. We're also having to work with more discerning clients in our care homes. They want the hotel experience. They want quality from curbside to bedside. They want cappuccino cafes to have dinner and a coffee with mum. They want a dining experience. They want Wi-Fi everywhere. They want corporate hospitality, and they want a bill in future which is separated out for their care costs and their accommodation costs. Behind the scenes, we're having to run medication audits, quality improvement regimes, ISO procedures, investors and people, and driving efficiency with lowering margins every day. As a result of that, we've had to end as a charity our Home for Life policy, which basically means that when somebody runs out of funding from a local authority and they can't continue to match our fees that we ask, we have to engage in a conversation which is about them moving on to a new care home, because we've worked out the subsidy that we're paying to do that, and we cannot afford it as a third sector organisation. There's many other things we're grappling with, governance, health and safety, clinical governance, board governance. There's a couple of organisations I would turn you to from the care home side, which is the National Care Forum and Care England. They're excellent organisations, and I can turn you in their direction. And that's one of the reasons for those dilemmas is why we've created a business development unit here in New England House. We're making sure we get our social media right. We're making sure that we understand and deploy technology, that our communications are on stream properly, and that we engage in the right way with our volunteers. I've got a series of stats, but I'm conscious of time, so I'll drop some of them, just give you some from the Office of National Statistics, which is, quote, the number of older people aged 75 and over is projected to rise by 90% to 10 million by mid-2039. The number of people aged 85 and over is projected to more than double, to reach 3.6 million by mid-2039, and the number of centenarians will rise sixfold from 14,000 to 83,000, and by that time, 1 in 12 people will be aged 80 or over. There's lots more stats that I can send on to you later on. Some of our own research basically has shown that by 2020, 52% of 65-year-olds will engage with online social networking. Now that's only 27%. But don't forget that remainder, that smaller amount left over, are going to be more isolated, so we need to help them more. I'll just go into a sort of quick world tour, because I've been visiting various countries and seeing how things have done in different places, and I do see that telecoms, media and technology are aligning in fairly chaotic structures but through innovation clusters and acceleration hubs. But they are now commercializing. We're seeing this a lot in China, we're seeing it in Australia, and throughout Asia. Data and information is being provided by global experts seamlessly. It's accessible to caregivers, and it's becoming beyond domiciliary care, beyond the family carer. It's becoming the third care force. A great thing I saw was Australian physiotherapists sending their kit to people in China and then having web seminars privately paid for as a consultation to show how to use that kit. The Chinese are getting behind things called farm to plate with drone technology. So from home you can see the cow that's going to end up on your plate, and you can see it sort of go around the farm, etc. There's some amazing things going on. Television channels are being created for crowdfunding, celebrity endorsement of featuring products and services in health and social care. And we're starting to see the things like the Smart Home Alliance nationally or internationally, which are creating smart homes and smart cities, and they cover everything from governance to living to the built environment, the economy, mobility, healthcare, and senior living is merging with other forms, such as universities as well, university campuses. They're working on an age-friendly society at the World Health Organization, defining outdoor space and buildings, transportation needs, housing, social participation, respect and isolation, civil partnership. It goes on and on and on. A lot of talk in Asia is about wiser homes. Wiser standing for watchful, intelligent, safe, empowering, and responsive. And some people's view is that the home in future will be the biggest app store in the world. The home will harvest the biodata used to personalize both the space and the living environment. So we're going to see smart kitchens, healthcare on demand, high-tech health carers, cloud education, medical butler services, health clouds, home emergency services, and right down granularly to personalized menus based on biodata, prompts on medication, remote urine analysis, detection of skin tissues and cancer, sleep quality wearables, bedroom furniture and clothing, basically all the stuff an older person needs to have a good night's rest. And in Asia, robotics have skipped a generation. My generation get robotics. In this country, it's going to be my son that gets robotics. So just one last thing, a few more things on that. Set-top boxes are going to be delivered to customize on content and services, promoting age-related topics like insurance and travel, going for the grey pound, and there's 30 million older people in China right now. And lastly, on the technology that I've seen abroad, use of tonal, voice and facial recognition and intelligent avatars providing content and interaction. It's all going on. It's all going on out there. But coming back to the UK market, and perhaps being a little bit more pedestrian, I'd like to give you my shopping list. What I, as Friends of the Elderly, am a customer for. I'm a customer for smart rostering software. Perhaps it's cloud-based to allow my carers to be at the right time in the right place and do the right thing. I'm looking for recruit and retention solutions, crowdsourcing to deal with my 25% turnover rate, which is better than the industry average. I want to get ahead of the queue. I'm looking at innovative ways to communicate with family and share care records, minding privacy and data protection. I want electronic care planning linked to iPads and mobiles for our care staff around our care homes. I want a lot, don't I? I'm looking for internet solutions linked to social media because our intranet doesn't work, it's dead. We need different ways of making sure that we communicate with our in-house staff and our external stakeholders as well. Document sharing and solutions, different solutions to video conferencing so I don't have to drive around to all of our care homes. GPS tracking innovation, smart home technology and biometric monitoring, the sort of thing you'll hear later on that's going on. Mobile phone technology and products, telecare, healthcare. It's all the same thing we're hearing again and again, but it's not good. Let's have a look at the average scooter that you see driving around on the streets of Brighton and Hove. Why don't we create an off-roader? Why don't you get a racing version? The work that Rex Bionics is doing in Kent on getting people out of wheelchairs, it's phenomenal, but a long time coming. I'm looking for online marketing solutions as well to attract my clients and my care staff. and speech therapy and communications therapy. But most of all, most importantly, I think we all need to seek for networks to connect and join older people and volunteers to help end loneliness. So that's online platforms that bring together family, friends, communities to care for older people around them. So my last couple of ideas on closing is your clients are care homes, domiciliary care agencies, private clients, family carers, local authorities, clinical commissioning groups, and believe me that the generic demand is proven. But I think your products and your services and your solutions need to be geared to the people who use them. I've been an entrepreneur, I've had venture capital backing, I've followed the money. But what I've learned is to work alongside social innovation at the same time, to co-design what you deliver with your service users so you can truly change the relationship of the care setting in this country. So I'd leave you with some of the things that at the National Care Conference that we all agreed as CEOs of larger providers that we want delivery solutions to our perpetual quest for quality, you and yours, and that's a mum's test, that's the senior mum's test. How would I want my mum to be cared for? What is good for technology for me? Art, leadership and learning, innovation, talent, help me manage my workforce, aspiration, ambition, and a greater understanding so we can all deliver for this vulnerable older group that we're all going to be in, well, some of us sooner than later. But thank you very much.